back. Thanks for staying with us. Our panelists are already lined up, so let's convene today's summit. And as always, before we introduce the topic, allow me to introduce our distinguished guests. And what a panel do we have for you today from Tanzania, broadcaster and producer Phil Dave. Always great seeing you, Phil. Thanks for joining us. From Edinburgh, journalist and author Andrew MacGregor Marshall. Hello, sir. And here in our Tel Aviv studios, David Mencer, former director of Labor Friends of Israel. Hey, David. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much for joining us tonight. And our main topic, naturally, from now on, it's long live the king. So what is the future of the British monarchy, or should we really ask, does the monarchy have a future? Let's take a closer look and pick up the conversation right after.
The Queen is dead. Long live the King. Presidents, prime ministers and foreign royalty were among the 2,000 mourners who gathered to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II at a royal funeral in Westminster Abbey, the building where she was married and was crowned Queen. Revered for her sense of duty and service to the people, the Queen's unprecedented 70-year reign wasn't smooth sailing, marred by many scandals, the latest one stemming from her children's personal lives. While hundreds of thousands queued for hours on end to see the Queen's coffin, a number of people have been arrested for holding anti-monarchy protests. If the Queen's death is the end of an era, should a new era have a royal family at all? Is King Charles up for the job? And how will a post-Queen world look?
So let's get to it, gentlemen. How will a post-Queen world look like? We all begin with our quick-fire round of 30 seconds each and pick up the debate right after. So, Phil, Dave, take the lead, please.
Well, in terms of how a post-Queen world will look, sadly, I dread to think, really, because, of course, Her late Majesty was our stay and stable that just made somehow the UK, no matter what turbulence it was going through, seem a little better. So, of course, yes, it is true that I do worry what it will look like now that she's no longer around, but I am quietly confident from what I've seen from King Charles already that he will carry on his late mother's great work. But I think that actually the problem of the UK started way before we lost Her Majesty. So I think that whatever problems there are, we need to solve them whether she's here or not.
Okay, well, we'll get to all those problems in a split second. Andrew MacGregor Marshall, your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's actually a very positive moment, because I think Queen Elizabeth was the last monarch, the last respected monarch around the world. And so her passing is really the end of monarchy. Because this was a system that worked for, many hundreds of years in the past, but it's a very primitive system. It doesn't work now. And let's not forget, these are people who claim that just because their father or their grandfather or their, was royal, they have a right to be head of state. They wear bizarre hats that they call crowns. And that might have worked centuries ago, but it doesn't work now.
Okay, and, we'll put a stop right here and continue in a moment. David Mencer, last but not least, your 30 seconds are on.
Look, I think Britain has just put on the most remarkable spectacle. You had 500 heads of state and their spouses in London, in Westminster Abbey. You cannot think of another occasion around the world in recent history that has attracted such crowds. I mean, there's a reason why all those heads of state and all those hundreds of thousands of people flocked to London and to the other places where the Queen was, is because this institution remains relevant, and there's everything to build on from here.
And on that note, please feel free to interact from this point onwards. In the second part of our debate, we will discuss more the Commonwealth and perhaps the global impact. But let's begin with the UK itself. Is the British monarchy obsolete? Was the Queen the glue that kept it all intact, so to speak, as Andrew MacGregor Marshall suggests?
Look, I think
no,
Charles is...
not. I mean, I think that she was most certainly she's certainly a fine example of British culture. But to say that monarchy is over now because Her late Majesty is no longer with us is just ridiculous. I think, fortunately, the wish thinking of a lunatic fringe.
Yes, I can hear you laughing there. Please chime in.
I'm laughing because Phil has just put down his copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People by calling one of our guests the lunatic fringe. Look, I mean, of course, a monarchy is an outdated organisation, but it's as good or bad as any other system of leadership. Monarchy and kings and queens, they're not politicians. They haven't got the same foibles of politicians. If King Charles has learnt anything, don't forget he's 74 now. He's, in the later years of his life. I think he's a lot calmer than he was. I think if he can look after his own personal temperament, I think these could be good years ahead of the country. I think that the last 10 days has shown something absolutely remarkable that almost nowhere else in the world could have pulled off. And the reason that there was this outpouring of love for the Queen, I think, was because when she served the public, people believed her. When she said, "I serve, I will devote my life to service," people believed her. And I think Charles has to emulate that. I think he should probably stop expressing opinions on all sorts of things that he has done in the past. I think, we never knew anything about the Queen in terms of her personal opinions, except for the fact that she liked horse racing. I think Charles should emulate that. Yeah. What's that? Sorry, and gin. Yeah. Is that what you were saying? I think she devoted her life to public service, and that is a wonderful example which King Charles should certainly follow. And I think he is of an age where the sort of impetuous nature, which I think he got from his father, has hopefully left him, and that just leaves us with hopefully service to the public.
But the king had previously talked in favor of slimming down the more Scandinavian model, if you will, of a monarchy. Is this what we are to see next?
I mean, it's not clear, but look,
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think that it's a terrible thing if he was to do.
Yes, let's allow Andrew to speak for a sec.
All right. I mean, look, the Queen was somebody that was widely respected by everybody, including people like me who are not supporters of the monarchy. But the biggest point, obviously, is that the biggest flaw of a hereditary monarchy system is you've no idea. It's a lottery who you get next. It could be somebody good, and with Queen Elizabeth, I think the British people and the people around of the Commonwealth are very lucky. But you could get, a mad monarch, a bad monarch, and throughout history is littered with examples of people like this. Now we've got Charles, who's shouting at ink pots and shouting at his servants over the past week. I don't think he's a terrible person, but he's clearly not the same kind of person than the Queen. So, I think the British monarchy is in crisis, and I think the whole system, the whole concept of monarchy is in crisis, because in the 21st century, we don't really need to have a system where people who are born from a ruling family can continue to be a ruling family, wearing strange clothes that, most people who are born in the past 50 years find hard to relate to. So I do think it's a time of reckoning for the monarchy, and whether or not they try to slim it down, I'm not sure it will work. Their main effort so far to slim it down was refusing titles to the kids of Harry and Meghan, which has been widely seen as racist, and they don't seem capable really of dealing with these public relations problems. So it is a crisis time for the monarchy, and I think they're struggling to cope with it.
And Phil, to that point, exactly, on a more principle level, is the monarchy, too, again, on an inherent level, undermines democracy? Phil Dave, are you still with us?
Should I jump in here? Because, of course, technically,
sorry, can you repeat the
correct.
question? I'm so
Go
sorry,
ahead.
that broke
Go
up
ahead.
there.
Yes, please continue. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't actually catch the question. I do apologise.
Phil, I'll give you a hand. She was asking whether we thought the monarchy is totally kaput because it's an anachronism in modern society. What's your view on that?
Thank you, David Mencer.
You're very welcome.
Co-presenter now. Look, I don't think the monarchy is kaput. that it is the ideal opportunity for those who are naturally anti-monarchy for some ridiculous reason. I've never understood why they are. I can only assume it's jealousy. But for those who are, it's their optimum chance for them to turn around and say, okay, yeah, monarchy's over, time to get rid of it. Of course it's not time to get rid of it. It's a massive part of British history.
Why?
I
thought we came on this show to have a sensible debate. I'm happy to listen to your views. Why are you calling the views of people who are anti-monarchy ridiculous? Surely you can understand why people might think that monarchy is an anachronism, and you could probably make your case without calling us ridiculous, right?
I mean, look, I think look at the robustness of British democracy.
No, I don't think I can. I think it's a massive part of British history, and I think the arrogance of people who are anti-monarchy, frankly, is just staggering. And it's just not the time to be anti-monarchy. If anything else, the fact that we have just lost Her Majesty, the longest running and longest ruling monarch of Great Britain, has just died. And now is the time that people are saying, okay, now it's time to think again about or just not having a monarch. I just think it's outrageous. It's so disrespectful.
But more than that, look at the robustness of British democracy.
On this show.
Yeah, of course. We are all here to hear your.
We're all here
views,
to have a polite conversation, and I'm quite surprised. I didn't expect to hear somebody just who refuses to even see the other side, because I understand why so many people loved Queen Elizabeth. I understand why many people are monarchist, and I'm happy to debate it. But to talk to somebody who thinks that any opposition to monarchy is inherently ridiculous and wrong, and that we're not allowed to give our opinions now, I mean, how can we even have a debate? It just sounds like you're trying to impose your views on everybody else, without even wanting to listen to what anybody else might think.
Well, co-host David Mencer, I'm sure, can mediate.
When you study A-level politics, one of the first questions you get asked when you're studying A-level politics is, give me the pluses and minuses of the monarchy. And the first plus, which you learn when you're studying A-level politics, is simply this: it's as good or as bad as any other system of government. Now, of course, the head of state in the UK is not a system of government.
Can you give us some references for that?
They are technically, because you look at the human presidents and the other heads of state around the world, and they're littered with people who are far too concerned with their own reflection in the mirror and take flights of fancy. This queen, which we've just lost, was not a capricious monarch. She did believe in service, which is why people loved her for it. And I think if Charles continues along that road, then he will be granted a similar amount of affection by people not only in the UK but around the world. And I think it's important to understand that this is a man that has been groomed for this job. I mean, the famous joke in the UK is he's had the longest apprenticeship of any job in the history of mankind, perhaps.
Yes.
If he can maintain that goodwill from the people, then I think he's got everything to play for, and the UK monarchy has everything to play for.
So essentially not the best option, but as flawed as all others, so to speak. David Mencer, Phil Dave, and Andrew MacGregor. Marshall, you're staying with us. We're taking a short break. We continue our polite debate. Welcome back to the summit. Still with us, Andrew MacGregor, Marshall, David Mencer, and Phil Dave. Thank you all, gentlemen, very much for sticking with us. Before we go back to the debate and perhaps broaden our horizons a bit literally, let's get the latest from the very emotional, packed streets of London today. I-24 News correspondent Albert Leutwin has the latest from the ground. Hey, Albert.
Yes, I'm on the street of Piccadilly. Piccadilly is one of the busiest streets in London, but it's been shut down for people who have left the funeral. The funeral was seen by millions on television and in person. About 2 million to 4 million people came to London, came to see the streets of London, came to see the cortege of Queen Elizabeth passed by. And now she's interred in Windsor Castle, in the grounds of Windsor Castle. And now the people have been milling about the street. They've done this plan to get people home from the streets for about 10, 15 years now. They've been planning this situation. And so now the people are headed home. The stores are closed. This is a national holiday today that's been done specifically because of the Queen's funeral. Part of the plan that's been in place now for about 20 years. People will go home now. People will reflect on the day. It's been a very somber day, a memorial day. And then now they'll go back to work, they'll go back to school. And the reign of Queen Elizabeth II has come to a close. In London, Albert Lewitton, I-24 News.
So from the streets of London to the entire world, essentially, can King Charles win over Commonwealth hearts? Let's begin with another quick fire round and pick up the debate right after. Andrew, please take the lead.
Well, let's be clear what the Commonwealth is. It's almost entirely countries that were violently colonized by Britain during Britain's imperial age. They had resources extracted from them. They were ruled against their wishes. And one of the most impressive things of the British monarchy is that it managed to disengage with this. It did decolonize, and it's tried to create the Commonwealth as some kind of benign organization. But we can see already that once now the Queen's gone, New Zealand's Prime Minister has said in her lifetime she thinks will become a republic. Yeah. Australia will go the same way. Yeah. Many African countries have been furious. Many Irish people are furious, and monarchists like one of our panelists can't understand this. They can't understand why.
Andrew, we'll make a stop right here and continue this conversation in a second. David Mencer, your thoughts?
Well, as ever, there's two sides to this story. You can take the pessimist side, which our friend Andrew just took, or you can take the optimist side, which is I could very well foresee a situation where the Commonwealth is enhanced, maybe for 10 years after this most remarkable show of affection for the Queen and for King Charles. Look, I think actually the Commonwealth is growing. That's something unique, which is not talked about very often. Countries are trying to join the Commonwealth, and leaders of New Zealand saying, maybe they'll give up, rule from the Commonwealth.
Right.
But I think that's potentially wishful thinking, because more often than not, as we've shown with Scotland, that isn't actually the case, and normally they lose these referendums.
Yes, Phil, Dave, 30 seconds are on. Phil, still technical problems with Phil. Okay, let's...
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Right, anyway, sorry about that. Yes, I was going to say that I think that if you were to look at a slightly more optimistic approach to the Commonwealth, then one would actually see that the Commonwealth has, by and large, actually in recent years, decades even, produced some rather special bonds between the UK and other countries. Yes, of course, there are those who want to go their own independent way. That's up to them. I think it's a shame personally. But look at the Commonwealth Games alone. That brings people together. It unites people by sports. And frankly, the colonial past that one of the other panelists refers to is frankly a thing of the past.
That depends who you ask, I am certain, and let's engage in a conversation.
I'm interested to know from either of other panelists, what does the Commonwealth actually do? We know it does the Commonwealth Games, but what else? What's the point of the Commonwealth? What does it do that couldn't be done by other international treaties? I mean, I'm slightly mystified, so I'd be fascinated to hear the answer to this.
Well, I mean, to your point, that's maybe precisely the point. There is nothing negative about being a member of the Commonwealth. It doesn't cost you money, probably, but maybe minimal amounts of money. It doesn't mean you're subjugated to the United Kingdom, but it does seem that lots of countries actually are trying to join the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth, has actually grown to, I think, 55 countries now. Compare that to French countries, Francophone countries, that, countries are rushing to leave that group of Francophone countries. So there is definitely something within the Commonwealth, within this club of nations, which does have a shared history, which was very much nurtured by Her Majesty. There's actually no reason to leave the Commonwealth. That's it, to play to that point precisely. There is no negative, there's no downside to it.
one of them of which is Rwanda, which the UK is now deporting asylum seekers to, which is, and is being paid a large amount of money for that. So I still don't understand, what is the purpose of being in the Commonwealth? And I appreciate you engaging with me on this discussion, but I didn't really hear anything in your answer that made me understand why any country would, it costs nothing, so they don't have to leave. But what's the point of them being in it?
So maybe the question is, what is the monarchy offering the Commonwealth at this day and age?
It's not about
do you
the
mind
monarchy.
If I?
It really.
I'm so sorry, Andrew. Do you mind if I ask you something? I'm so sorry, Andrew. Do you mind if I ask you something, sir? Just out of wild curiosity, do you hate? Do you hate Britain? Do you hate the country? Because I can't understand sort of this negativity towards it. It's almost like everything you're trying to find fault in.
No, I just believe that the system of monarchy is anachronistic and outdated. And I think it's a thing of the past. I think we've seen the trajectory of history where over the centuries we've seen more and more monarchies disappearing. And I'd like to see that happen in the UK. And I'm slightly baffled to why you don't want to engage in a sensible debate. You just want to say my opinions are ridiculous and I hate the UK because I happen to be against system of monarchy. I mean, it's not even a sensible argument.
But who? Okay, so it's a perfectly sensible argument. I'll tell you for why. Who are we to actually change our country's great history? This is what baffles me. You look at the state of the UK, right? The UK is in total disarray at the moment through politics, and you're actually saying you want a system that will hand over even more power to a bunch of reprobates who we call politicians to make decisions on our behalf. Thank heavens for the monarchy to be something in the way of a backbone to our country. I find it baffling. How do you want to get rid of them?
I don't think we even got into discussions about what kind of system could be better. But the fact that you're not willing to even consider the
so
fact
what? So you want to get rid of it? So you want to get rid of it and not replace it with anything?
Why don't you look across the Irish Sea to Ireland, which has an elected president, has a successful government. It's outperforming the UK on most metrics these days. What's wrong with the Irish system?
Well, the reason not to change the monarchy
wrong with the British system?
Is because it works. I mean, it's as simple as that. There's no burning platform here. We haven't got a monarch who is a power despot, who is imprisoning people, who is gathering wealth for his own benefit, who is mistreating his subjects. We haven't got that sort of monarchy. And the British system means we could never have that sort of monarchy because that was changed with Charles I or whoever it was. And that is replayed every year at the state opening of Parliament when the door is slammed in his face. So there is no burning platform here. There is no despot
our king has
monarch.
Actively
on paper, Andrew, I think you're right, but the reality is there's no problem with this monarch. Please do, Andrew. Please do. I'm desperate to hear your view.
King has tried to intervene in laws to benefit himself. He took legal action to prevent people knowing about that. He's literally accepted suitcases of cash from the Saudi businessmen, from shady people. Yeah. You're saying, there's no problem, it's all fine. Well, honestly, this doesn't look good to me. Our new monarch is somebody that accepts bribes.
Daylight.
Andrew, if someone handed you a suitcase full of cash, knowing it was going to go to a worthy cause, would you turn it down?
And on that, gentlemen, luckily for the universe, it's not up to us to decide the fate of a British monarchy at this point in time. David Mencer, Phil Dave, and Andrew MacGregor Marshall, thank you very much for engaging in the conversation today. We really appreciate it. We're out for a 2-minute break, the last one, and we'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere.